All right, I think we're live. We're gonna do a audio check just really quick. Can we hear? Do we have any sound? Check, check, 1, 2. Yep, we have sound. All right. All right, so welcome everybody. I wanted to take the time to make a more technical and detailed presentation on the police files that I was able to gather as a result of the successful lawsuit against the Riverside County Sheriff's Department. Frankly, a lot of this for a lot of people is going to be pretty boring. I don't find it boring at all, but for those that are interested in going over case documents, police files, and the like, I think you're going to have a blast. If you can't see the files, I made it portrait mode specifically because a lot of times when you zoom in, it's actually easier this way. But don't worry if you can't see it. I already have a link in the description that contains all of the case files for free, including the police report that you can download at any time. And each of the documents are also text searchable. So if you, for whatever reason, say you wanted to be lazy and you wanted to throw it into some AI tool to have it analyze it for you, you could do that too. But without further ado, the way that I was going to split this up is in two sections. So the first section, I was going to talk about the police files, and then I was going to talk about the lawsuit itself. Frankly, I think the easiest way to do this is just more or less verbatim go over and read much of the police documents themselves, and then provide my perspective, my take on what they're saying, what they're coming to a conclusion on, and then jump over into explaining the lawsuit and some specific sections as it pertains to the response that the county filed during the proceedings. And so that's the overview. From here, I actually finished writing a blog article condensing a lot of this into a easy text searchable, maybe 2-page article that I also attach each and every police file and lawsuit case pleading as well that I'll be publishing probably later today. But with all that out of the way, let's just get right into it. So on the screen here, there's a couple of different files obtained as a matter of this lawsuit. The first is actually the dispatch log, which is, for those that don't know, a itinerary of exactly who was located at what time uh, from the sheriff's department. So the time that the call to service was made to the sheriff's department, the time that a deputy was dispatched, the time that the deputies arrived, if other additional deputies or other staff arrived when they also arrived, and that's just capturing it in this nice table here. Reading off the top, um, to give you a whole overview. So, the call to service was made to the Riverside County Sheriff's Department at about 10:49 a.m. on June 25, the year 2000. So that's when the call to service was placed to the department, and that's when a dispatcher, so meaning somebody made an official 911 call. That's when the dispatcher then dispatched officers uh, promptly thereafter, just mere minutes, as you can see, at 10:55 a.m. to the location, which is again the gold base in Riverside County over at Hemet. Most interesting that I found here, and I won't read every single line item, but the most interesting thing I found, and you'll see why very shortly, we'll come back to it, is the very first line item here, which is actually the call to service being placed. In particular, it explains that the person calling Riverside County dispatch office, so somebody from Gold Base, which is also noted in the police report. The dispatcher asks that person if they know what this is in regards to, and if they have any other deputies and staff present. And what they describe here, according to the dispatch log, is that when the call was made, whoever made the call from Gold Base did not explain to them the reason for the call. They just explained that there was an injury, but they did not explain any other further information. So that was very interesting. Second of all, that they already had an ambulance on site, on scene. So before law enforcement was ever called, there was already an ambulance, not on scene, that was called before law enforcement was called. So that's probably from when I read through all of this, way too many times, frankly, at this point. That really stuck out to me, and you'll see why in a little bit. From the dispatch log here, the next thing I want you to take a look at is the time to which the entire incident and investigation concluded at the scene. And so this is in military time. That's how these are tracked. And so at about 6 o'clock p.m. is when all of the investigation on scene was called off. The deputies, the responding deputies themselves, which are three, did not get to the scene up until around 11:15, 11:20ish. And we can see that by the time in the middle of the table, 11:09, 11:22, 11:27. Those are just the field deputies, which specifically were not investigators. They were just the regular beat cops, as you might see them. Just like in LAPD, these are just regular field deputies. So from the time that we have again at about 10:49 a.m. to a call to service being made, to about 11, we'll just say 11:25 as an average, when three deputies arrived on scene. And again, like I said, the other important note here is that there was already an ambulance on scene before the call to service was made. Not just called, right? The ambulance was not just called, but the ambulance was already at the scene. And that the investigation was concluded at about 6 o'clock p.m. that same day. Moving on, this is just a standard incident report. Frankly, it's not all that important. But we're just going to go and actually read off some of the investigative documentation that was done and attached to the police files, to the police report. So we're jumping from the dispatch log to the investigation document that was attached to the police report made by the responding sergeant and supervisors on scene. So the first page here just shows who some of the folks that arrived on scene are on the side of law enforcement, and how they were able to identify the person. Just a very just a short summary. So the identification of the body was not able to be conclusively done on scene. It was not until the coroner's office had taken custody and conducted their analysis that they were able to definitively conclude via dental records that it was in fact Stacy. And then you have the responding deputies here. You have Deputy Craig, you have Sergeant McCauley, then you have Investigator Greer, as well as a forensic technician. I'm not even sure how you pronounce that, but I'm gonna go on a limb and say Maistas. So those are some of the original people that responded. There was also the coroner's deputies as well. And the interesting thing about this is I actually make mention of it in the lawsuit. When there's a body found at a scene, a field deputy does not have any authority to actually handle a body. There's really two divisions of authority. One is the field deputies that are simply supposed to section off the perimeter and make sure that the scene is preserved. And they're only there to make they're only there to make visual observations of what they can see. They're not allowed to actually touch anything at the scene, and they're supposed to wait for the coroner and the investigators and detectives to actually come and do their analysis. That is not up to them to uh, do. The analysis and the investigation is not theirs to conduct. They're simply there just to preserve the scene. So that's a very important piece that many might not be aware of, some might overlook, but nonetheless, it's important to bring up. I wanted to point it out there. There's a couple of other folks that were also on scene, not just from the side of law enforcement, but the names of each of the people interviewed uh, at the investigation. Um, another bit of information from this investigation sheet is that the forensic technician, when they arrived, also took photographs of the scene as well as of the body, and completed a diagram of the scene. This is where that summary that's from the evidence obtained, this is where it goes into actually explaining each of those pieces of information and summarize it in this incident log. So parts of this I will explain and frankly just read verbatim because it's going to be easier, and then I'll give my takes on it. So starting at June 25, the year 2000, about 11:11 a.m. This is the uh, forensic technician arrived over at the base. They talked to a California Department of Forestry investigator, David Petronovich, who told them, the investigators, that he had been dispatched to a report of a subject that had burned in a fire. This David Petronovich from the California Department of Forestry stated that on his arrival, he discovered an individual that was located inside the electrical vault that was deceased. The same California Department of Forestry investigator told the law enforcement investigator that he was told by employees, meaning Scientologists at the location, that this deceased individual might have been working on an irrigation system prior to the incident. The David Petronovich stated that the individual in the vault could possibly be a woman named Stacy Meyer. He also provided me the name of some of the other people that he spoke with, and stated that this person from Gold Base is from Gold Base and holds this title. I'm guessing the exact title might be better known to people that actually came from Gold Base, but frankly, none of that is really of any interest. It's just showing that there's somebody that has some sort of supervisory position, similar to what we see that's from the Sea Org, um, similar to what we see in the other building. Then the law enforcement investigator goes to the location of the electrical vault, and the vault is located on the north side of Highway 79, approximately an eighth of a mile north of the roadway on a slight slope, and on the property of Golden Era Productions. So this vault that they're talking about is not on a public, is not on, right by the side of the road. It's actually on their property. But the thing that's most interesting about it, you'll see in just a little bit, is that the vault itself is actually built and managed by California Edison, which is the electrical utility company in that county. So that's how that works. As the investigator approached the vault, they noticed that there was yellow and black barrier tape surrounding the vault in about a 25-foot diameter. So again, preserving the scene from the field deputies that responded. They later determined the tape had been placed there by the California Department of Forestry personnel, which is very interesting. Um, I imagine this is also the same group that was contacted first and provided the ambulance. Although we do know that the Riverside County Sheriff's Office is not the one that provided the ambulance. So it must be that either one of two things happened. The California Department of Forestry provided an ambulance, or that Scientology contacted an ambulance privately and got them on scene. And the ambulance situation we worked out in just a little bit here. The vault appeared to be a concrete structure, approximately 10, 10 feet by 10 feet in size. So basically, more or less, it's a cube, and which is pretty common for what we'll soon see here. And from what I've seen personally for more or less residential based vaults, the vault was buried in the ground with approximately 2 feet protruding above the ground. So there's just a little lip, right? It's not flush with the ground, it's a little lip. And here's the most important part, I think, about the description of this vault. In the middle of the vault was a standard manhole cover with a steel cover lying on the north rim of the vault cover sleeve. The cover had rubber material attached to slots on the cover. It appears the rubber was placed there to act as a handle when lifting the cover. There was also what appeared to be clothing that was blue in color positioned on top of a vent tube that was next to the vault opening. So it basically reads that if you've ever seen a manhole cover, they always have at least one part of it with a hole in it, so that there's a way to route some sort of strap to lift it. And that's very common. Manhole covers for residential use, so manhole covers that are not on a roadway that traffic is driving over, these are typically about 200 pounds in weight. So sometimes they're cast iron, sometimes they're steel, or some sort of hybrid of steel aluminum, depending on nowadays. And um, but usually they're steel or cast iron. They're quite heavy, and the most important thing about them is that they're deliberately made to be heavy, and their center of mass is very off. So for anybody that's ever deadlifted or just weightlifted in general, the nice thing about weightlifting is the center of mass is always evenly distributed and very easy to get a strong grip on, and the weight is not askew. It's even. It's you know exactly where to attach to the weight, pick it up. That is not the case with a manhole cover. And it's designed to be that way so that it's tamper proof. You don't want just anybody messing around and getting access to an area that they really shouldn't have access to. And for the vast majority of people, 200 pounds is quite a bit of weight. So keep that in perspective, that you have a skew center of mass, 200-pound metal chunk. Um, and you'll soon, it also explain here as well that the entrance to the vault is blocked by this manhole cover, and that the entrance is in fact closed, meaning the vault was sealed. So that's also important. And then it talks about a vent tube. So basically, if you've ever think about a snorkel, you need to have some sort of ventilation inside the vault, because human will need to enter there, and that's to supply fresh air. And so it's more or less just uh, basically a piece of pipe sticking up in a good height off the ground, so that you don't have rodents um, going and jumping in, as well as if there's any flash flooding that happens, the water doesn't just immediately, um, from being flushed, doesn't just immediately rush into the vault and fire vault. So that's all they're saying here. The ground surrounding the vault was soft dirt containing various sizes of rocks and boulders. There were numerous footprints and tracks in the dirt surrounding the vault. So you can imagine this cube with the lip in front of it. He's saying there's a bunch of footprints all around the perimeter. So not just a single linear path, but there's a whole bunch of footprints and of different sizes all around the vault. Then they say, I looked inside the vault and observed a wooden 6-foot step ladder covered with a white powder that was in the partially open position. So, um, that is on track with what you would see inside a electrical vault. For obvious reasons, you can't have a metal ladder. Would typically use a wooden step ladder, and they usually have folding mechanism via joints. Um, and it looks like in this case, because again, this is a 10 by 10 by 10 vault. Um, the step ladder, he's saying here that it was not completely folded out. Keep that in mind. I also observed a human laying at the bottom of the vault, possibly a white female. The white powder, by the way, will be explained in just a little bit. The individual was also covered with white powder. The individual was lying face down between two electrical transformers with its head facing in a southwest direction. The individual's hands were against the west wall and appeared to be severely burned. The head of the individual was severely burned and most of the hair missing. There appeared to be some hair left in the form of a ponytail on the rear of the skull. The upper torso of the individual was also severely burned. They noticed the individual was wearing a pair of unknown colored shorts, and the feet of the person were facing in the northeast direction. The individual was wearing what also appeared to be white tennis shoes. That's going to be important because we know that different shoes leave different kinds of tracks, not just and we have definitively from earlier that there were multiple tracks of multiple sizes all around the perimeter of the vault. And Stacy at that time seemed to have worn a pair of tennis shoes. There was no sign of life in the individual. Based on their observation of the individual and the condition of their body, the subject appeared to be deceased and was pronounced dead at about 11:15. The vault appeared to be approximately 8 foot deep based on the height of the wooden ladder. So, not quite, because we know the ladder was not completely folded out. And the way it works with the ladder is, remember, there's a lip on the edge of the vault. You usually will clip. There's these little hooks that will secure to that lip, or if not directly on the outer edge of the vault, usually on the inside there will be some sort of concrete apparatus that you'll hook it in so that it doesn't fall and I'll lose the ladder and you can't pick it up. Um so not quite. It's at least 10 feet deep. But they're just taking guess just from what their eyes could see, based on the ladder not being folded, the location. The south end of the vault appeared to have a black substance on the floor, possibly oil. Um, the vault contained 4 electrical transformers that appeared to be wired in series. At about 11:20 a.m. from South California Edison, which is the utility company, they arrived at the location, and the representative conducted a safety check of the transformers in the vault by placing a voltmeter on a long pole. That makes sense. Um, he individually checked each connection point on the transformer and advised me that all of the transformers were de-energized. Conducted a check of the air inside the vault for the presence of explosive gas, which can happen. Um, his check revealed no dangerous gas was present in the vault. That's all good and proper. At about 11:25 a.m., Deputy Craig arrived on the scene. I briefed him on the situation and directed him to begin compiling a critical incident log, which cache log. At about 11:30 a.m., um, Sergeant McCauley arrived on the scene. Uh, so again, before Riverside County Sheriff's Office had arrived, there was somebody from the forestry department already there. And they're the ones that set up the perimeter tape, not law enforcement. And that's what this log is explaining. This log is explaining the scene that was covered up by this person from the California Forestry Department. The investigator briefed Deputy Craig on the situation and directed him to begin compiling the log. At about 11:30 a.m., once Sergeant McCauley arrived, uh, he requested forensics, the coroner, and California OSHA to also arrive to respond on the scene, assist in the investigation. Sergeant McCauley directed the taped-off area to be expanded. Deputy Craig placed sheriff's barrier tape around the location. So now, for the first time at 11:30, we actually have proper law enforcement barricade of the scene of the incident, and that's gonna be very important. Um, but we'll move on. At about 11:55 a.m., they interviewed a Scientologist. Um, so this is one of their Sea Org guards. This guy or girl works with Golden Era Productions, and they indicated to the Riverside County Sheriff's investigator that he, the Sea Org member, was on foot patrol on the exact location of where the electrical vault is between 10 a.m. and 10:30 a.m. The Sea Org guard said that he was about 150 yards northwest of the electrical vault. That's when he stated he heard a loud bang or pop, looked in the general direction of the noise, and noticed smoke coming from the uncovered manhole. So this guy just so happened to be in the exact location at the exact time that this incident occurred. So he was quite literally right in that exact location, um, and noticed the smoke. And then it's this person who, based on their testimony from the deposition that the investigator did on scene, this Sea Org member moved to the location, he got about as close as 100 feet from the vault, and then said something to the tune of feeling that the ground was electrically charged. Maybe sometimes what you could have, or like this happens, you could feel your um, if you ever done like a little electrostatic uh, buildup when you rub your hands on blanket or on the carpet, and you can feel the hairs on your hand. It very well could be that that's what this person was. He then said, this Sea Org person said, they called the security guard gate and requested shovels and fire extinguishers to be brought to the location. And he also requested the Scientology electrician to respond to the scene, turn off the power to the area. This Sea Org member, who was the first on the scene and was within 150 yards of the scene at exactly the time that occurred, said it took approximately 5 to 10 minutes for the power to be turned off in the area. After the power was turned off, he stated that the electrician, the Scientology electrician there, another security guard, and himself, so 3 people, approached the manhole to extinguish the fire in the vault. This first Sea Org security guard that was already on the scene stated that the electrician donned a protective electrical suit and began to spray fire extinguisher agent in the manhole. After several minutes, the smoke subsided. He looked into the hole and noticed that there was a person lying at the bottom of the vault. He then said that another Sea Org member called for assistance on his cell phone, and at that time they believed that the person laying at the bottom was Stacy, which is interesting because How they could possibly state that is quite bizarre. In fact, we know from the coroner, as well as the investigator detailed it earlier, the body was burned beyond recognition, and only through dental records were they able to actually identify who this person was. But the security guard here is specifically stating that they knew that it was Stacy. He stated that he had not spoke. This Sea Org guy that was already near the scene of the vault stated that he had not spoken to Stacy that day, but knew that she was on the property because he was told by a gate guard that she had arrived to the location at about 9 a.m. I want to stop there for a second and explain something. The biggest thing that stuck out to me as far as arriving is that there was no such thing as arriving. She lived in Gold Base. She worked at Gold Base. She was at Gold Base. From all other counts that I've heard from people who have been at Gold Base, and similar to the compound over at the Blue Building and elsewhere, they live where they work. And so I don't know if they're saying the room that she slept in versus where this specific vault was in is so far that they maybe shuttle people from the living quarters to the working quarters. That could be a possibility, but I I found that a little confusing because it was never addressed. And in fact, there was actually a bit of testimony that gives quite the opposite, which is that she was already in the exact spot of her living quarters were in the same vicinity of where the vault is, meaning the compound is the campus is separated in such a way that their living quarters, in this case, just so happen to be right where the utility electrical vault is located. But anyway, the Sea Guard member stated that he had known Stacy for some time, and stated that her duties included general maintenance on the grounds. He said he had never seen her in the vault and does not know why she would have entered the vault. The investigator asked the org member if he felt Stacy could have removed the metal cover from the vault, and he stated that Stacy had the ability to lift heavy items in her position as a maintenance worker. This was one of the biggest, and I feel like I'm breaking my flow with all this, but frankly, I don't care. It's my stream, and I'll do whatever I want. There's no way, based on what I've seen from the coroner's report and based on what we know of the diet to be from people that live in this compound, there's no way that she just straight up deadlifted 200 pounds completely on her own without any sort of assistance. Even having a strap on the manhole cover, the sheer weight and the way that it's distributed would make it practically impossible for her to lift on her own. From what I've seen from as far as the stature of her body, from photos before as well as what's indicated in this police report, she was a quite petite person. She's not a professional athlete. She doesn't seem to be somebody that participated in weightlifting. In other words, she's not jacked. And from what I've seen of young women her age, which at this time she's about 20 years old, who have documented based on their diet and the living environment, documented malnourishment, a petite frame, and a giant metal chunk of slab as a manhole cover, which is not uniform in its weight and is deliberately designed to prevent people from being able to pick it up and move it and get access to where they shouldn't have. There's just no way. There's just no way that she could have ever lifted that on her own. So far, we've also not seen any explanation as to, you know, well, could there plausibly be something like, did she use a shovel to provide leverage and sort of seesaw the manhole cover using the shovel and move it that way? And I can tell you, if even if that were the case, which it's not, you would see signs of that being the case. You would see some sort of marring and scratching on the manhole cover to where the blade of the shovel is jammed, and you would see deformation in a shovel. Frankly, from that amount of weight to where she would be standing on the completely opposite end and putting all her body weight as well as the weight of the manhole cover acting on that shovel, it is more likely that the shovel, if it wasn't of a metal build all around, the wood would have splintered. And so that is not documented anywhere. There is no wooden shovel that is deformed or splintered in any way. Um, I just don't believe that she that she straight up, like Popeye, fucking just deadlifted 200 pounds in a middle of a goddamn desert with extreme levels of heat, um, malnourishment, at the crack of dawn, having zero athletic or weightlifting training, and an exceptionally slender and petite build. There's just no way. I've seen even athletic women, even during my time in sports, there's no way that she just completely deadlifted a non-uniform metal object at the drop of a hat and just fucking like Superman it. There's just no way. There's no way. Um. So anyway, the investigator asked the same Sea Org member if there's anything inside or outside the vault that was moved or touched. He pointed to two fire extinguishers and a shovel that had been brought to the location to extinguish the fire. He said the items are exactly in the place as he remembers and that he could not provide any further information regarding. And so, again, we have definitive proof at this point that there was no shovel used by Stacy or whoever else to provide leverage to open the manhole cover. The manhole cover was closed before, and then the manhole cover was opened. There was no use of any tools to create leverage and lift the manhole cover out. Um, Moving on, though. At about 12:26 p.m., the investigator now is talking to a different Sea Org member. Uh, this other person told me that they are the blank for Golden Area Productions. I'm guessing this is probably their supervisor. Uh, he stated that he was advised by a gate guard at about 10:15 a.m. that there was an electrical problem on the north side of the property. An electrical problem. So that is very interesting in the wording that there's an electrical problem. Not that there was a fire, uh, but that there was an electrical problem. He proceeded to the site where the failure was reported. On his arrival, he saw heavy and black smoke coming from an electrical vault. He then proceeded to another electrical vault that is located approximately 300 yards west of the vault that was emitting the smoke. So that is quite normal. You can have basically one sectioned areas where usually they'll place all of the power systems. Um, that's pretty common. That's pretty normal. He indicated that he shut down all the power to the north side of the property. The same guard then donned an electrical shock prevention suit. I'm guessing this is their electrician, and proceeded to the vault where the smoke was coming from. On his arrival, he began to spray fire extinguisher agent into the vault. So they have not entered the vault. They are at top of the vault. Smoke is coming out. They supposedly have a electric shock prevention suit, which basically looks like a giant spacesuit. And then they sprayed fire extinguisher for 45 seconds. He said the smoke began to dissipate, and as the smoke cleared, he observed that a person was lying at the bottom of the vault. Then the investigator asked this person if they knew who was lying at the bottom of the vault. He stated that it was Stacy. How could you have known that it was Stacy? The body was destroyed beyond recognition, horrifically burned, which makes sense for the amount of current and power that went through her body. That makes sense. Okay. That absolutely checks out. A horribly disfigured body. There was no way. There was no way. Um, but this guy also happened to know that it was Stacy. Then the investigator asks if Stacy was assigned to perform any electrical work on the property. The electrician guy said no, she was not. The investigator asks why he feels she entered the vault, and this guy responds that he felt she might have been working on an irrigation system control box. So an irrigation system, they're talking about some sort of sprinkler system, which would make sense if you're in the middle of the desert, and they do have, because I've driven by the compound myself before, and they do have different, uh, nature plant stuff. I don't know why I'm getting jumbled up. Trees and the like around their compound. So that's hence the irrigation control system they're talking about. This guy believed that Stacy might have entered the vault to check for an electrical malfunction that might have occurred within the irrigation system. So they're assuming that there is a issue with the irrigation system. And you'll see from the rest of the testimony here that was actually never there was nobody ever stated that there was a issue with the irrigation system at all. And more specifically, actually, you'll actually see some of the later testimony that she was not at all assigned to do any work on their sprinkler system at all. And she had never been assigned to take on that task. And in fact, most of her maintenance work involved super simple stuff like changing a light bulb or other very light duty cleaning and maintenance work, which is to be expected from somebody um, like her with a petite stature. That makes sense to me. Young, scrawny woman who has, no physical strength. That makes sense. Continuing on, though. He pointed out the location of the irrigation control box to me. The box is located approximately 6 feet away from the vault. There was several other electrical connection boxes also in the same area as the irrigation control box. Again, that makes sense. That checks out. Nothing out of the ordinary there. I asked him the last time he was involved with any maintenance in the vault. He said he performed some maintenance in the vault approximately 3 weeks ago. That is bizarre. It could that was never clarified as to what specific work they were talking about in the vault. It could be something as simple as really the only thing that you need to perform as a maintenance duty on these vaults is you just periodically check to see if there's flooding inside the vault, because in the middle of the desert out there, believe it or not, sometimes there is in fact flash flooding due to like a very, very short period of super heavy rainfall. Those vaults are designed to be drained, but sometimes for a wide variety of reasons, those drainage ports do not drain properly. Most of the time, and it's going to sound gross, but it is the truth. Most of the time, it's because rodents actually get into the vault, usually by way of where the vent hole is, if it's not sealed, or sometimes they'll just chew through. And I've seen it happen myself. Most of the time, they'll chew through the netting that's affixed to the vent, and they'll get in that way and use the vault as shelter. Vast majority of the time, that's exactly what it is. But we noticed in the investigators' report that there was no rodents at all, that it was a clean vault. besides the body inside the vault and the ladder and the powder remnants from the fire extinguisher. So I don't know. Weird, interesting, because I personally been and done work inside electrical vaults. It's my whole background, but anyway, moving on. Yeah, the investigator asked this guy if the vault was covered when he completed the maintenance work. He did say that the vault cover was placed in the closed position after completing maintenance. So the vault was closed. The manhole cover was on. Vault was closed. He also asked him about the rubber hose that was wrapped around the manhole cover. He stated he wasn't sure, but believed the rubber was attached to the cover when he was performing maintenance about 3 weeks ago. That handle to me does not, just generally from what I've seen, it's not at all bizarre. Like I said, sometimes you'll use ratchet straps. Sometimes I've seen people get creative like this and they'll use hoses. That in and of itself is not bizarre. But again, this guy, as far as what specific maintenance and who else he did this maintenance with, and whether he had help lifting the manhole cover, was never investigated at all. In fact, that was completely not broached, which is bizarre. From just basic investigation 101 tactics, that is very bizarre. A man very easily could lift a 200-pound manhole cover. Just that's just a biological difference. Even with the Steoric diet. But anyway, moving on. Then the investigator asked him about the presence of the ladder in the vault. This guy, the Steoric member or Scientologist, stated the ladder was not in storage shed about 25 feet from the vault and placed it into the vault to gain entry. The investigator notes that they did observe several ladders of various sizes that were stored inside the little hut next to the vault. Totally normal. I mean, it's basically a tool shed, right? Nothing out of the ordinary. The investigator asked the Scientologist if he had entered the vault after extinguishing the fire in the vault. He stated once he saw there was a person inside the vault, he did not attempt to enter the vault. He then stated he removed his protective suit and placed it on top of a vent tube next to the opening of the vault. He could not provide any further information regarding the incident. And I just want to stop there, right? Because this guy fucking admits that he never entered the vault, at least a 10-foot deep vault. A manhole cover is not all that large. And so there's shadows inside the vault. There's smoke. There's horrific smells I can only imagine. And there's basically a completely decimated body with zero distinguishing features left as a result of this horrific incident. But yet this guy, standing all the way outside with the beating heat, with smoke, with the remnants of the fire extinguisher powder also on top of the body, he was able to identify definitively that it was Stacy. That does not add up to me. That does not add up to me. Okay? That is very, very bizarre to me. Very bizarre. Moving on, though. The investigator then took a look at the area under the irrigation control panel. The ground was soft dirt, so these are just upright boxes, electrical boxes, very normal construction. The ground was soft dirt. They noticed a shoe impression just below the control box. The impression seemed to be the same pattern as the bottom of the tennis shoe of the individual lying in the bottom of the vault. That area was then secured for processing. So there was shoe prints, one of which was the tennis shoe. Moving on to an interview with another person at about 12:59 p.m., the investigators talked to uh, another Scientologist who was an employee of Golden Era Productions. They stated that this guy stated that he was at the main entrance of the property when he heard a call of a fire and electrical problem on the north side of the property at about 10 a.m. He stated, this guy, this new Scientologist guy, stated that he went to the location, and on his arrival of the scene, he remained clear until the power to the vault had been disconnected. After the power disconnected, he went to the opening of the vault and assisted that electrician guy with extinguishing the fire. So that checks out. You have two guys, right, basically standing on top of the vault, spraying fire extinguisher. As this is the wording is so particular. I mean, you really got to be very particular about the wording. Super particular about the wording. Okay. As the smoke cleared from the vault, he observed an individual lying at the bottom of the vault. The person being interviewed, the Scientologist, states that he immediately recognized the individual as a person he knows as Stacy. He didn't just recognize this person. He immediately recognized that it was Stacy. A horrifically disfigured body with no remnants of what otherwise could be a distinguishing feature other than shoes, which you can't even quite notice until you go into the vault, as this investigator did, and carry the body for analysis at the coroner. Immediately they noticed that it was Stacy. Not just noticed, they immediately noticed. He told this Scientologist then told the guard that there was a person burned at the location and for the guard to call an ambulance. And this was, he's saying, at about 10 a.m. Same time that the other guy just so happened to be within 150 yards of that vault as well. This guy then advised the gate guard to contact the sheriff's department for a deputy to respond to the incident. The investigator then asked the same Scientologist how he knew the individual laying on their vault was Stacy. How he knew. Fucking good question. I mean, how do you know? You have a horribly disfigured body, and even the sheriffs were only able to make out who this person was after the coroner conducted a dental record. How do you know? He said that, well, he'd been friends with Stacy for many years and knew Stacy well, recognized her from the build in the individual and the ponytail, which, based on how her body was located inside the vault, unless this guy was inside the vault, which he stated he wasn't, there's no possible way, from reading all this, there's no possible way that he could have known. That just does not add up. But moving on. They asked him if he knew any reason as to why Stacy would have gone into the vault. He said he did not know why she was in there. Said that he has never seen her in the vault at any time. And he was also asked by the investigator if Stacy performed any electrical work. He said he did not believe she had ever done that type of work. The investigator also asked this guy if he felt Stacy had the ability to move the metal manhole cover. This guy also states that she possessed the physical strength to do so. It's quite consistent. You have three people ending their testimony in the exact same fashion. And again, a petite frame, a chunk of metal that is built specifically and deliberately not to be tampered with, and vast majority of the time requires at least two people, especially with a woman's build. Moving on, at about 1:09 p.m., The investigator then talked to another Scientologist um, at Golden Era Productions, and this guy told the investigator that he was advised by radio that the north side of the facility had lost power and that smoke was coming from an electrical vault. This Scientologist advised the other Scientologist, who was the main guard gate, that there was an electrical problem and to respond to further investigate. This interviewee also stated that he responded to the scene and observed smoke. A few minutes later, he got a telephone call advising him to call an ambulance, and that he, at that point, contacted the American Medical Response Ambulance Company, AMR, on their business line to advise them that they had a burn victim and requested they respond to the scene. About 2 or 3 minutes later, this guy stated he received another telephone call from another Scientologist who advised him to call the sheriff's department and have a deputy respond to the scene. This guy being interviewed could not provide any. At about 1:40 p.m., forensic technician Maestas and deputy coroner Wilmer arrived at the scene and the investigator briefed both of them on the incident and what information they had discovered at this point. And the deputy coroner Wilmer provided me a coroner case number, and the investigator directed forensic technician Maestas to take overall photos of this and of the. I also indicated to Maestas where the possible footprint was located that might have belonged to the victim, directed them to photograph the possible footprint, and requested Maestas to draw a diagram of the vault. And the other investigator, Sherry Saville from the division of OSHA, arrived on scene at about 1:45 p.m. This investigator briefed him on the circumstances surrounding the incident. He then began his own parallel investigation. At about 1:50 p.m., they talked to another Scientologist who specifically works for maintenance at Golden Era Productions, different from the other 3 people he had interviewed so far. The investigator asks this guy if he was the supervisor for Stacy. He stated that he was and asked the supervisor to describe her duties. He stated that Stacy was, quote, responsible for light maintenance around the facility. Light maintenance, which makes fucking sense because a petite woman is not capable of raw deadlifting 200 goddamn pounds. It's just not. She's in a malnourished state based on the living conditions of that scenario. There's no way that she just raw deadlifted fucking 200 pounds, and not just deadlifted it. You have to also lift it out of the way. A manhole cover has to be lifted a couple of inches off the ground, and you have to then shift your weight afterwards to get it off from where it's seated. It sits flush in the ring, and it's usually a couple inches thick. It's not like it's paper thin, and all you have to do is just lift it, a centimeter and just toss it aside. That's not how it works. So again, it's starting to add up here, right? And their testimony already does not add up. From the first 3 people that this guy's interviewed who all said, yeah, she lifts heavy stuff. But then her supervisor fucking explains that she does light maintenance work. Okay? He said Stacy has a number of different maintenance tasks, from painting to landscaping to changing light bulbs. All of that is lightweight duty shit. Okay? None of that involves fucking raw deadlifting, no belt strap, no fucking wrist straps, no nothing. 200 pounds straight up and shifting it a couple of inches afterwards. Basically like a fucking clean and jerk. That's just not. Okay? Anyway. Her supervisor said that she was working a normal workday. The investigator asked her supervisor if he has ever seen Stacy work on any lawn sprinkler systems on the facility. The supervisor, okay, the supervisor, her fucking supervisor said he has never seen her work on any lawn sprinkler systems. So why is it that all of the other people were saying that she was specifically tasked, assigned, and known to work on a fucking sprinkler system when her own supervisor clearly states here that she has never, ever been tasked to work on the sprinkler system, ever. He said he had never, so I read that. The investigator also asked the supervisor if Stacy has ever performed any electrical maintenance work. He said that she has never worked on any electrical tasks with the exception of changing light bulbs, which again makes fucking sense because a small woman of very petite stature, that's exactly the only task that she's physically capable of. Makes perfect fucking sense. The supervisor also stated he has never seen Stacy working in or around the vault. He does not know why she would ever enter the vault. The supervisor stated the last time he saw Stacy was Saturday night at about 8 p.m. The investigator also asked the supervisor about Stacy's physical and mental state. Specifically, the investigator asked the supervisor if Stacy would have the ability to lift and pull a metal manhole cover. And here's where it gets fucking interesting. The supervisor told the investigator that Stacy does have the ability to lift and move heavy items. It gets fucking great here, man. He said he has seen her in the past lift heavy tables and other heavy items. He also stated that Stacy seemed fine mentally and that she was happy and not depressed the last time he spoke to her. I want to give you guys a reference for those folding tables that he's talking about. Those lawn tables or other dining tables. Those are about, maybe we'll say 40 to 60 pounds. They're not fucking 200 pounds. And they fold up. They have a great center of mass. And they have handles as well as overall a uniform shape with which to pick up and move. Okay. You can also cheat them because you can prop them up against the corner and have the weight be shifted on that corner instead of you fully having to pick it up entirely off the air, suspended, and keep it suspended. That's the fucking difference there. And it's fantastic that he brought that up as an example because all it does is continuously prove that the only type of labor task that she's ever done is very lightweight shit. Okay? Change a goddamn light bulb, move a couple of dining tables. That's about it. Cut some hedges. I mean, paint some shit. That's the extent of her maintenance tasks. Not raw deadlift 200 goddamn pounds without a lifting belt, without wrist straps, in the middle of a goddamn desert with the sun beating on her in a malnourished diet. First thing in the fucking morning, too. First goddamn thing in the morning. First thing. I mean, fascinating. Fucking fascinating. The investigator then interviews another person. At about 2:07 p.m., they talk to another person who's also employee of Golden Era Productions. And this woman stated that she personally spoke to Stacy that day at about 9:15 a.m. in her office. So this is a coworker of Stacy's. This woman stated that Stacy seemed fine and was happy and not depressed. This woman stated that Stacy did not indicate to her that she was going to do any specific task that day and that they had a light conversation for a few minutes. After talking, they both went on their separate ways. The investigator asked this woman about Stacy's physical strength. Oh, this woman said that Stacy's very strong for a girl and had been able to lift heavy objects on the occasion. The investigator asked the woman if she knew of any reason why Stacy would enter the electrical vault. The woman stated she had no idea why Stacy would enter the vault, and the investigator asked the woman if Stacy was having any problems or conflicts with anybody. The woman told the investigator that she was not aware of any problems or conflicts. At about 2:15 p.m., investigator Greer, so another investigator, which was also mentioned earlier, arrived on scene and assumed control of the investigation. I briefed him on the situation and the information I had gathered up to this point in my investigation. Yet another person was investigated, not by investigator Greer, but by the initial investigator here. At about 2:45 p.m., they spoke to another Scientologist who was responsible for the maintenance repair of the sprinkler system. This man told the investigator that he is responsible for the water pump and water supply line that runs along the property. He said that he has nothing to do with any of the landscape sprinkler systems. Hold on, just 1 second. This maintenance guy stated he has known Stacy for about a year. He also stated that he has never seen her work on any electrical or water sprinkler systems on the property. He also stated he had not seen Stacy working today, and that he was unable to provide any further information regarding the incident. Re-interview. So they re-interviewed one of the other people, this same investigator, not Greer, but this other investigator. At about 3:15 p.m., I was contacted by the Scientologist who he had interviewed before, and this Scientologist now tells this investigator that he now recalls speaking to Stacy on Saturday evening about a squirrel that was electrocuted in the same vault about 3 weeks ago. He stated that Stacy asked him several questions about the death of the squirrel. He also stated that Stacy was fond of small animals, that Stacy had asked him about details on how the squirrel died in the vault, and asked him about how the vault was opened and the use of a ladder to gain entry to the vault. This man told the investigator that Stacy seemed quite curious and concerned how an animal could get into the vault. He was unable to provide any further information regarding the discussion with Stacy and the vault. Man, there's a fucking lot to unpack there, but I'll tell you what. Number one, yes, it is possible for small animals like squirrels and rodents to get into electrical vaults. In fact, it happens all the time. Couple of things. Number one, there was no dead rodents in that vault. That tells me, in fact, that's actually the opposite. The way that they have their vent created is probably in some sort of U shape where the intake is pointing down, meaning the rodents would essentially have to fucking defy gravity and start levitating to get into it. And that's gas heating. They'll have a I forget the name of the type of pipe they have. The P-trap. Yeah, P-trap pipe. But that's more or less how it looks like. And again, that makes sense because they would have to basically defy gravity and start fucking living. The investigator made no note of any dead rodents other than just Stacy's body inside the vault. That's pretty interesting. I think there's a lot more there, but frankly, that's all I really wanted to point out about, just so that people have a good grounding on facts as far as that takes. Moving on. At about 3:40 p.m., the California Department of Forestry conducted a briefing on the procedures for removing the victim from the vault. Duties were assigned, and investigator Greer briefed rescue personnel on how he wanted the victim to be removed from the vault to preserve any possible evidence. This guy from California Edison returned to the scene at about 3:58 p.m. and conducted a recheck of the vault to ensure that all the power was still deactivated. He indicated that the power was in fact de-energized at that time. This representative from California Edison told the investigator that the transformer connectors in the electrical vault where the victim was located are bare and not insulated. He stated that an all electrical vault that is operated by Edison, which it is in this case, is fully insulated and that entry can be made with power energized without injury to any persons in the fucking vault. Holy shit. That is huge. I'll continue reading this. This paragraph is fucking golden, man. This paragraph right here, and I'll actually explain to you because I have direct knowledge on what he's talking about when they say the transformer connectors being insulated or not insulated. So I'll explain that in just a bit. Let me go back here. He stated that any electrical vault that is operated by Edison is fully insulated and that entry can be made with power energized. So the transformers can be energized without any injury to the person in the vault. The investigator also asked this representative to estimate the weight of the metal manhole cover. He told me that the weight was between at least 150 to 200 pounds. They're usually closer to 200 pounds. Usually closer. So I'm rounding up. It's typically 200 pounds. So we have confirmation from a utility engineer, basically, so is this what they are? That yes, the manhole cover is heavy as shit. And yes, that it is bizarre that the connectors on the transformers are bare. The way that those connectors are typically covered is they'll coat them with some sort of resin epoxy. That's very, very normal and standard. That's a vast majority of the time that's how they'll do it. And the most interesting thing is in this case, because they're underground, there's no chance of sun beating on the resin to deteriorate it, okay? Sometimes they'll even have some sort of powder coating, which can withstand even higher temperatures because those vaults, when you have that much small confined space, although it's underground, which technically it is cooler than if it was just completely exposed. But that confined space, you could say, well, the resin was deteriorated. No, they can actually withstand quite high temperatures, and it is bizarre that even for an underground installation, you still have to gain access into it. And in fact, more so that it's underground, that it would be insulated. That's really fucking bizarre. It's very bizarre. So yeah. Moving on, at about 4:45 p.m., a California Department of Forestry fireman was lowered into the vault via a rope hoist. The victim was prepared for removal from the vault by rescue personnel. While preparing the victim for removal, the fireman stated the victim's left hand and arm appeared to be resting on one of the wires that were coming from the transformer. The fireman also located and recovered a watch that possibly belonged to the victim. It was located approximately 3 feet to the west from where the victim was found. The fireman also located a yellow metal ring that was found under the victim, under where the victim was lying. Deputy Coroner Wilmer took possession of the watch and ring. What's bizarre about that is if she was wearing these metallic objects, you would have seen and they would have noted some sort of burn marks on them from the current running through her body. It would not have stayed just internal to her body. Conductors attached to her would have also had experienced a surge through them. But it seems like these were completely untouched artifacts. That is bizarre to me. The victim was brought to the surface. The victim was severely burned from the waist on up. The individual was not visually recognizable. Fucking A. Like I've been saying all along. The victim was not visually recognizable. You have a highly disfigured body, not at all visually recognizable. There seemed to be no other signs of trauma to the victim other than massive burning to the upper torso, arms, hands, and head area. Forensic technician Maestas took photos of the bottom of the victim's shoes and overall photos of the victim. There did not appear to be any oil or grease on the bottom of the victim's shoes. So when they were talking about the um, oily substance on the floor, that was more likely than not, as I explained in my interview with Dodge, your internals basically, your blood especially cold boils. In this case, the opposite. So it's very likely that what we saw was either from other rodents that maybe have been removed from the past, although it doesn't seem to be the case. It was dried blood from dead rodents before, or more than likely from her body. The victim was then placed into a body bag and transported into the coroner's office by coroner's transport at about 5:25 p.m. At about 5:28 p.m., Investigator Greer, Deputy Coroner Wilmer, and I responded to a Scientologist in reference to securing the property that belonged to the victim. We were taken to the location by Scientologist, who is the supervisor for Golden Era Productions. We arrived at her. This is where her bunk bed is. We arrived at the location about 5:38 p.m. Unlocked and opened the door to her apartment and noticed the apartment was shared by several individuals. Fucking course it was. Fucking course it was. One of the individuals identified which area the bunk bed was occupied by the victim. The victim's bed was made. She had clothing stored in a small dresser. There was also a small nightstand next to the bed that contained clothing. We looked in her belongings and also under the bed and did not see any writings or notes indicating suicidal ideation, which checks out. So the usual suicide note was not at all present. The victim's area was neat and well kept. Deputy Coroner Wilmer decided not to recover any property belonging to the victim. It was difficult to determine what property belonged to the victim without any roommates present. We left the apartment about 5:47 p.m. This is fucking weird to me because a couple of things. The fact that you just had a death at your compound, anybody that's, first of all, any investigator, okay, as well as the owner of the property, should be made to have all the people that roomed with her get their asses to that room and be fucking interviewed. But they weren't. They were not interviewed at all. Because they could tell you very easily which shit laying around the room is hers and which shit isn't. But that specifically, we know, did not happen. There was no efforts for any of those people to be deposed and questioned. Just fucking didn't happen. Very goddamn bizarre. That's very fucking bizarre. Statements. Where did I leave off? Okay. My investigation discovered the victim, for reasons unknown, entered the electrical vault. Statements from persons familiar with the victim indicated that she had no reason to enter the vault. Her direct supervisor stated that she had no duties inside the vault. Her supervisor did indicate the victim had some interest about a ground squirrel that was also electrocuted in the same vault approximately 2 weeks ago. The victim asked her supervisor questions regarding how to enter the vault. She asked if a ladder was necessary, and the supervisor indicated that Stacy seemed to be curious about the vault and safety of squirrels that occupy the area. He described her as having a strong liking for small animals. The squirrel is a big fucking symbol here, okay? First of all the rodents that it could be, and most of the time it's actually rats or mice. For, it's huge symbolism. In the way I take it is like a giant fuck you, okay? Because the squirrel means quite a bit in this cult. And of all the rodents, which it's typically not, it's typically rats and mice. Um, man, I'll just. There was no signs of any work on any water sprinkler systems on the property other than the irrigation control box panel. Statements from the people that know the victim also indicated she was physically strong and would have the ability to fucking raw deadlift 200 pounds steel metal manhole cover. God, yeah, she just fucking raw single handedly deadlifted 200-pound manhole cover. Sure, sure. I was unable to locate anybody that could provide the information regarding the manhole cover being previously opened or being removed by the victim. The chief electrician stated after working in the vault 3 weeks ago, the cover had been placed back into the closed position. It was fucking closed. He was unaware of any other maintenance in the vault since that time. It appears that the ladder used was taken from the storage building that was adjacent to the electrical vault. It is unknown if the victim put the ladder in position or if the ladder was put there by somebody else. The bottom of the vault under the victim appeared to have a dark oil substance on the floor. It was not determined if the substance was on the floor prior to the victim's entry or if the substance was there as a result of the victim's death. The victim's shoes did not reveal any signs of oil on the bottom of the shoe soles. Based on the position of the victim's arms and hands, it appears the victim was falling at the time of contact with the electrical wires in the vault. Well. It appears the victim was trying to catch herself against the south wall of the vault. It appears the victim's left arm or hand made contact with the electrical connector on the transformer. The victim was instantly electrocuted and burned beyond visual recognition. So, fucking A. Yet again, confirmation. How the fuck could anybody else verify that it was her when all you have is a horribly disfigured body? The interior of the vault did not contain any evidence that the victim had in. The interior of the vault did not contain evidence that the victim had inside prior to the incident. There were no tools or items indicating the victim had been performing any maintenance in the vault. There are no signs or evidence that the victim was pushed or thrown in the vault. There's no indication that the victim committed suicide. The death appears to be accidental. Just an outright fucking conclusion within the first day of the investigation. How the fuck you could ever jump to that within less than a day? You got to remember, these guys got here at about 11:15, and then by 5:45 p.m. they're saying, yeah, fucking, it's all accidental. What a botched fucking investigation. Botched fucking investigation. The only last part here that's really relevant here is on June 22nd, 2001, that same investigator contacted Deputy Coroner Gray at the Riverside County Sheriff's Office, and Gray stated that the cause of death was electrocution. Toxicology work on the victim was negative, and her identity was confirmed via dental records. The case was closed as an accidental death with no fucking follow-up. What we literally have here is less than a 5-hour investigation. No other witnesses fucking interviewed that knew Stacy and lived with her, and just deemed it outright in a year. And what I find most interesting about the year, okay, a year lapsed. It was very specific. An exact year lapsed from the time of the death to the time that this was closed as a accidental death. I did some research on civil laws in a state of California for statute of limitations for families and that would otherwise want to seek some sort of relief for an incident like this. And wouldn't you fucking know it, exactly 1 year was that statute of limitations for civil prosecution. 1 year for equitable relief for such an incident. You have an investigation where they don't interview a shitload of people. Um, and overall, the investigation takes about 5 hours tops to complete. I mean, like, you got to be fucking kidding me, man. You got to be you have basically what's being assumed that a young woman raw fucking deadlifted 200 pounds. Raw deadlifted 200 goddamn pounds. There's no fucking way that happened. I know that because I've worked with women who are athletes, okay? Especially from that young of age, and even ones that are professional athletes at this point in time. There's no fucking way. There's no goddamn way. There's no goddamn way that she was able to completely on her own raw deadlift 200 goddamn pounds. And not only deadlifted up straight, but then was able to shift her entire weight, as well as getting the manhole cover onto, out of its seated position, which is at least like a couple inches thick, lift it straight up, shift it on the ground, and then have to also drag the manhole cover out. Like, there's just no fucking way. I mean, there's no way. There's no way. So, yeah. The last portion I had was just some of the responses from the county that I found particularly interesting. Frankly, their whole response to my lawsuit seeking these files is pretty dumb. I'm gonna go through the most funny ones that I thought merited any sort of review, and we'll just leave it at that. So here we go. So that concludes the police files. Yeah, I mean, what a bunch of shit. All right. Anyway, all right. Point 10. They answered that the county has no obligation to produce records demonstrating why responsive records do not exist. So I challenged them to prove how they had conducted their search to come to the determination that the records I'm seeking do not exist. Obviously, we know from the fucking records that you guys are looking at that those records do in fact exist. There is in fact a dispatch log. There is in fact a police report, as well as the investigative report done on scene for this entire case. They do exist. And I challenge them to explain to me what research what search tactics they use to conclude that, if they actually, logged on to their system that contains police reports and actually searched for the date, if they searched just for her name, how the hell did they make that conclusion? And they said that the county has no obligation to explain how they came to that conclusion of the records not existing. When in fact, the most interesting and powerful bit about if you don't know much about California state law for the CPRA as it's known, the California Public Records Act, quite literally, one of the many components of it is that it quite literally states that the agency, when it makes such a declaration, has to explain what search tactics it did to come to that conclusion. You can't just stipulate that the records just don't exist because we just said they don't exist. You have to explain what you did to come to that conclusion. So that's that. I found that hilarious. So that was response number 10 they had. Hilarious. Point 14. This was where I challenged them on doing a balancing test and explaining why they're simply stating that the files being sought are not uh, in the interest of the public. You can't just say they're not in the interest of the public. You have to do what's called a balancing test. So you have to weigh factors and you have to explain what sort of work you did internally to utilize those factors to come to your determination. Did you talk to other supervisors, for example, in the agency, and who might have been the deputies that responded to that scene to come to that conclusion? Or did you again just stipulate that doesn't matter that it's been over 25 years and doesn't matter that there's a bunch of protests happening virally internationally now? None of that matters. We're just stipulating that it's not in the public interest. You can't do that. Again, the California Public Records Act is very specific, and it quite literally mandates that you do have to do that. So, um, clown show. Response 17. Uh, I challenged them to say if any parts of the records I requested contain sensitive data, like for example, if they contained her photographs of her deceased remains. Obviously, that's sensitive. I don't want that. I don't think people, um, frankly, want that either. Okay. The explanation, the documents themselves, where the investigator multiple times makes it plainly clear that the body is deceased and that it's horrifically disfigured and not at all identifiable visually, that's acceptable enough. Okay. That's stuff that you can redact and withhold. I challenge them to say, well, you can withhold those parts and release other parts. You can't just withhold everything. You have to release the stuff that isn't as sensitive. And they respond by saying the county denies that the request does not encompass sensitive data. I quite literally told them, I understand this is a sensitive issue. That does not mean all of the files are sensitive as such. You can't just stipulate that to be true. And so I pushed back on that, and wow, what a shameful statement, by the way, too. I mean, it's not the first time they've done this, as you'll see in another point, where they've just said, well, it's a death investigation, so it's all sensitive, so therefore you're not going to get any of the files. Done. It's sensitive. What do we mean by sensitive? Doesn't matter. It's sensitive. We've already told you it's sensitive. Move on. Absolute joke. And this is the part where I also challenge them to say if there are in fact any sort of health records, personal health records of her, like if she had any sort of medical diagnoses, I don't need to know that. In fact, I did not even ask for any of her personal health records. For them to stipulate that I'm seeking health records when I quite literally and explicitly told them I'm not is highly contemptuous. Highly, highly contemptuous. Point 18. They brought up a case, Williams and Rivero, and said that, well, according to this case, police files, routine police files like a police report and a dispatch log are actually not routinely released. And I challenged them on it. And in fact, that case actually says the opposite. Williams and Rivero confirms that law enforcement records are not always automatically subject to disclosure, but it does not mean that those same files are blanket cover for permanent withholding. It's not a blanket shield that means you can hide all police files. It's not how Williams and Rivero works. It just simply says that routine police records like the police report and the dispatch log are not always, every single time, every instance, immediately released. There are exemptions, but it doesn't mean that it's an infinite shield to permanently hold those records, which is quite literally what they said in their suit. So, point 18, absolute goof. Point 19. I challenged him again to say this has been over 25 years. The case was also publicly stated as closed, and you can see that it actually that conclusion was reached within just an exact year, and that you can release such files with redactions. So, point 20, I challenged them and said, well, you know, even if there's certain sections that you're claiming that might be too sensitive, things like an incident ID or which we can see here, right? Or the date that a document was prepared are not sensitive information at all. In fact, releasing that, like, you can black out every piece of information here. If you just showed the incident ID, it would literally tell the public absolutely nothing. It would quite literally tell nothing. Having an incident ID means nothing. Even if you work for the Riverside County Sheriff's Department, that incident ID would mean absolutely nothing. Unless you specifically had been given authorization to view some of the police files. There's controls on top of controls at law enforcement agencies. Just because you work as a cop doesn't mean that you automatically have access to all the records. It's actually the complete opposite. There's all sorts of layers of controls and security that prevent different people, including cops, from accessing different types of policing files. And so either they're really fucking stupid and don't know that, or again, they're just trying to be more contemptuous and throw you off the track. But anyway, that's the response. Response 21. So here they're talking about investigatory exemptions for releasing documents. Investigatory exemptions quite literally only apply when there's an active investigation. This was quite literally closed. And if I sound facetious or pissed off, it's because it is yet again another pattern in practice. Like, what an absolute shit show. And I'm not reading chat right now, so if anybody's I just want to get through some of this and then I'll read some of the chat because there's just so much material, man. I'm already in my flow. I don't want to lose track of the thoughts, so we're just gonna keep going on here. So yeah, investigatory exemptions only apply when there's an active investigation, and after investigations have been closed, you have to apply a balancing test. So that was the reply to that. Reply 22. They said, well, just because you are requesting these records, we can just outright withhold all of the records. And I state, well, actually, no, can't do that. The California Public Records Act specifically states that you have to identify which parts of the records you want to withhold, and you have to explain how you deduced that those are sections that are rightfully qualified to be redacted. The California Public Records Act, in fact, even if it's mostly redacted, still states you have to you have to release, and it always errs on the side of releasing rather than not. Point 23. Police reports are not acquired in confidence. So police reports are not acquired as some sort of they're trying to make the point that, well, we had some sort of secret source that tipped us off, and that's how we got the police report. But that's, first of all, we saw from the report itself that's not fucking true at all. They were actually contacted by regular means of dialing 911. Already big fucking lie. Like, second of all, a police report is not the same as anonymous tips. It's the opposite. A police report is just basic routine internal administrative document, whereas an anonymous tip is completely fucking different. So had no relevance there, and they just pulled that citation out of their ass. Point 24. They stated that evidence code 1040 applies as a blanket justification for withholding records, and that's in fact not at all what evidence code 1040 is. Evidence code 1040 is in fact it's a fucking process of how you maintain the integrity and validate the chain of custody for evidence. It has fucking nothing to do with releasing public records at all. Um, that was just wholly irrelevant. I, I don't I don't even fucking know why, but there you go. That's what they said on point 24. Um, 25. Uh, this is a fun one, man. They said, well, even minimal information like a case number or a location or an incident ID, even that qualifies to be withheld, and it quite literally does not. In fact, law enforcement, the response I put was law enforcement routinely releases minimal information such as case number, date, location, but yet here they withheld it in full and didn't even do a partial release. Fucking shit. Point 26. Privacy rights are for living people, not for the deceased, especially which family members they're in may also be deceased and have a known public history of uh, being disconnected. So they were stating, well, you're not a brother or related by blood, so automatically we're going to exempt the records from being released because you don't fall into that category, where that's just fucking stupid. If that was the case, then nobody on planet Earth could make any sort of public records request for anything unless they were directly blood related. I mean, what a trash response and legal argument to make. Unless you individually, personally, are blood related to anybody within the incident that you're trying to seek records on, then we can't release those records to you. That falls under privacy. No, no. Just let's see. I think that was the last one. Oh, and yeah, point 36 was another interesting. So I told them that based on how they were explain the records back to me, right? So I told them that, and I had to explain to them, get this, and this is the final point. Take a look at chat. Get this, okay? What a fucking. And this whole thing was a shit show on the side of the sheriff's department, but uh, yeah, like that's just so. I talked to Duarte over at City Hall, and I actually, and this is a good conversation I had with Duarte. So, long story short, Duarte actually explained to me specifically how the chain of custody works from the field officer who preserves the scene to the coroner and other medical staff who are actually doing the analysis, who actually assume possession and custody of the body and actually clear the scene um, and gather all evidence, conduct analysis as such. What the sheriff's department was saying is that the responding deputies, meaning just the regular field deputies, they're back and forth to me. They were saying that the field deputies were in fact the ones that handled the body. And I challenged them and I made it very clear. Are you telling me that you botched a fucking investigation by having a regular field deputy take possession, handle, and conduct analysis on a body? Is that what you're saying? Because if that's the fucking God's honest truth, then holy shit, we have a completely trashed investigation that absolutely, just on that alone, let alone all the other shit that I explained today, just on that basis alone, I mean, that completely would reopen this investigation, and yeah, that would call a lot of things in fucking question. And so I have Duarte to thank for that one. Duarte was a really big fucking help on that piece of the lawsuit, and yeah, he was instrumental. He was very helpful on that piece, and that was about it. Honestly, a lot of the other stuff on the response they had on the lawsuit was pretty dumb and not worth mentioning. But like I said, if you want to read all the shit, then it's all there for you. The police files themselves are only about 19 pages if you exclude the cover sheet they had, so it's not a lot of reading, frankly. Pretty short. All right. With all of that out of the way, I'll take a look and see what questions people had. You go, yeah, 3 weeks. Yeah, so Hellgears is saying 3 weeks ago they're saying they conduct the maintenance, but I'm telling you, Hellgear, there's no maintenance to be conducted on a electrical vault. The only time maintenance is done on an electrical vault is not even by people from where the that are the property owners. It's actually Cal Edison that fucking comes, sends a power engineer or electrical engineer to do that work for you, because most laymen and even electricians do not have high voltage experience. In fact, if you actually take a look at how these apprenticeship works and the licensing works for electricians, journeyman is not a singular classification. There are classifications for the different levels of power. A journeyman is not the same. You have journeymen that handle that are linemen, which is a requires far more licensure, far more training, and specifically those guys are only allowed to handle high voltage systems. So we're talking about distribution systems, okay? Not household shit, okay? Not even industrial shit. Those guys are totally different from regular uh 120 volt or even uh 400, 600 volt, the type of shit you would see in a industrial setting. Those linemen are totally different classification, totally different licensure, and for obvious reasons make way more fucking money. Those people do not, those are the people that service vaults, not whoever the property owner is. That's already bizarre to me. You don't, that's bizarre. As far as any other maintenance, like I said, if there is flooding, which first of all you would see, because if there was excessive flooding, the only way that happens is like I said, in the desert, believe it or not, there is flash flooding where you'll have a shit ton of rain dumped in a short period of time. Um, that does happen. For anybody that is not familiar with how California works, that does happen. In fact, it actually happened here in LA. We got shitloads of rain dumped on us for a few days and then dry as fuck forever and left to our that does happen. In the ugly middle of the actual proper desert though, it happens quite more. And those vaults do have drainage ports though. And the vast majority of the time, the way they clog those drainage ports is if you have rodents that will dig in and die because they can't get out, because the way that the vent hole is designed is actually just like your sink. It's shaped as a P-trap. And so a P-trap, the only way that even a very small mouse, the only way they could get up there is quite literally if they fucking levitated and started levitating through the P-trap, getting into the entrance of the P-trap first of all, and then they'd have to make their way through the bend in the P-trap and then ultimately getting in. It does happen. The vast majority of the time, it usually only happens to vaults where they have the standard flat doors that just open up, and they're huge. Basically, they're like a house door. But this is not the case. This is a tiny little manhole cover that weighs 200 pounds, and then a singular vent to the side. So yeah, it is bizarre. What sort of? I mean, when they talk about maintenance, I would assume maybe they did some landscaping because there were vines, or the sand, had blown it all over the cover, and that I can understand. No, I don't know what the fuck else. Thanks on your 3 viewers. Hey, 3 or 10, however the fuck it is. That just shows me that somebody somewhere out there is interested, and for me it was a good exercise and shit that I'll be doing as a whole career. Gary Jackson, Brad. Yeah, you know, as far as people of contact, some of the names of these folks I don't know. There's at the very end of the police file, it actually shows a list of some of the names. You know, my job is done on this matter. If people wanted to pursue this, you know, I've already written to prosecutors. I've already told them my thoughts that this is a giant fucking botched investigation that was done shot in a shoddy manner. This is a piss poor investigation. I mean, they didn't fucking interview the people that she lived with. Literally, they did not interview anybody that she lived with in her bunk bedroom. They fucking said it. They said it on the police file. They did not interview any of those people. That's a botched investigation. That shit should be 100% reopened. The fact of the matter is, you can't just definitively, after a year where no other work was done, say, yeah, you know what? Yeah, done. You know, it was an accidental death. No, you don't know shit, is what the documents here show. Law enforcement doesn't know fuck all. They didn't fucking do a proper investigation. There was all manner of tracks around the vault, but that's not even the big issue here is, okay, they're documenting what they saw on the scene. They're not asking the fucking question about how in God's green earth did she ever actually get access to the fucking vault in the first place. There's no way. No offense to anybody that's a woman, okay? But biology is fucking biology. A young 20-year-old woman who is malnourished with a petite stature on a Scientology diet as a Sea Org slave is not able to fucking raw deadlift 200 pounds and essentially clean and jerk it out of the seated position of where the manhole cover is and fully drag that manhole cover afterwards to fully have access to that entryway. It's not possible, man. All right. I've seen even athletic women really struggle to deadlift 225, which is 2 plates on each side. And that's what you have to understand that the bar and the plates have a very, very uniform and centered and good center of mass. That is not how a manhole cover is designed at all. It's actually specifically, the metallurgy is specifically designed that different sections of the manhole cover hold the different centers of mass to make it really fucking hard to lift. And most of the time, you need at least 2 people, or you get a forklift. You put a ratchet, you put straps on the part that has a hole, and that hole also is not centered on the manhole cover, but it's at a really bizarre fucking angle, off askew to the side. And you have the forklift lift the manhole cover up. And I know it's not a roadway one, but 200 pounds is 200 fucking pounds, all right? I know grown men who can't deadlift 200 pounds. And they eat fucking well. I'm telling you, they eat really fucking well. All right? I know what it takes to deadlift 200 pounds. And for a young woman who has that kind of diet, that kind of stature, that kind of age, and that kind of harsh working environment, and I've seen them for myself too. I've seen Odo, I've seen Alex, and everybody else that's in the Sea Org. They're malnourished, all right? They're malnourished. It doesn't matter that she was young. There's no way she raw deadlifted 200 pounds. No weightlifting belt, no hand straps. Those are the questions that are important. And the fact that there's all sorts of shit. So yeah, it's a very shady investigation with all manner of discrepancies. It just not fucking add. Here they're saying 1 + 1 = 50 billion, and it's stupid. So, but I urge anybody, because I don't know the names of the folks listed in these files. I'm sure you guys know a hell of a lot more on who they are and what they do, and who the people that knew Stacy were. I mean, looking at all this, I'm like, this is a murder investigation. This is a fucking murder case. And murder has no statute of limitations here. Okay. Murder does not have to be as specific as what people think it is, where somebody put hands on her and, threw her in there. Murder has all manner. Murder, in fact, to be a criminal defense attorney and to be a criminal prosecutor is quite literally the thickest fucking law book. Of all the law books that are out there, that is the thickest book. And it's for a fucking reason, because that is the toughest position for obvious reasons, and it requires a shitload of process to be followed to a goddamn T. And the records here show none of that shit was followed, and there's just way too much wiggle room here. So yeah, the people that are for this cause that really want to take it up, I've already put the names of the prosecutors and their contact information, their emails, their office address. This case deserves to be reopened, to be investigated as a murder. It deserves to be heard by a grand jury, and rather than just fucking remain buried. I mean, what a shit show. What an absolute shit show. This is the type of records that you would read as part of a college class to show you a good example of what not to do. In fact, I actually had this conversation with Chanel a while back as she was going through some of her classes. And a lot of the police reports I read from some of her homework look exactly like this kind of shit, where they would leave entire swaths of material witnesses completely out of the investigation. Like, how the people that she lived with, and none of them were interviewed. None of them were forced to, were told by law enforcement, get your asses here at this fucking time. We need to talk to each and every one of you individually, and all of you are going to be kept separate from each other. None of you are going to have the ability to talk to anybody. All of you need a fucking, I mean, absolute shit show. Absolute shit show. And also at the same time this was going on, the fact of the matter is too, there was a Riverside County board member who was on the board of supervisors, who was known for taking money. He had financial contributions given to him for his political campaign for office by Scientology. And what he did is he enacted an ordinance making it illegal to protest during the exact same period this shit happened at outside of the gold base. There's significant probable cause here to open this case up as a murder investigation and let a grand jury hear it. I mean, it's exactly what a goddamn grand jury and a prosecutor is supposed to do. So yeah, people that are in this cause that know a hell of a lot more about the situation. I only have the Headley's books to go off of. I wasn't in gold base. And I had testimony that I talked to Laura and other people that other public information about gold base. That's what I went off of. But yeah, I mean, I think this is a case that very well deserves to be reopened. So yeah, hopefully I didn't run on for too long. Almost about 2 hours, so that's what I figured. Let's see if anybody else questions. Oh, here we go. T says start a petition. Yeah, no, that I agree, T. All the YouTube channels that are out there, people like yourself, people like Alex over in UK, I mean, yeah, Jenna in San Diego, Serge, and there's a shit ton of people. It'd be very easy, in my opinion, to open up a petition and push for a grand jury to investigate. But do I know Ashley Shaner? That I don't know, but you know what, T? If you could email me the date and time and some background on Ashley, I could do a public records request to see how that was handled on this on the as far as law enforcement goes. So I don't know Ashley Shaner, but if you want to email me a short brief on the time of their death and things of that nature, that way that'll give me enough for me to make a public records request to see what the cops have done and what the board of supervisors have done. So unfortunately, I don't know that one, but if you want to give me some, yeah. Oh, yep. I said I had a article I'll be publishing. So I'll be posting on that. I'll make a post on my channel too. What I wanted to do is I wanted to wait until I made this recording and then attach this recording to that Substack post. So that way, people that could read that post can also have this audio to go off of, and yeah, it just makes it a lot easier. All right, so that's all I got. It was quite a bit of information, but like I said, the records, if you want to look at the police files yourself, you want to read the lawsuit yourself, the link is in the description. You can download each of the files individually as a PDF. Each of the files also are text searchable, so if you wanted to search for names and all that, they do have that option. And you can also, if you wanted to stick to just the web link only, you can make notes and the like directly here for saving. So um, with that, I'll leave you guys to it. I'll see you in the next one, and y'all have a good weekend. And shit, what is it then? And it's almost Christmas too. Happy holidays. God damn, what's an entire year, man. Year's almost over. 2025 is almost over. So for those that celebrate and all that, happy holidays. Y'all take care, and I'll see